Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the induction session program. Today we have with us Manish. Manish is a final year computer science and engineering student at the institute. He has completed internships in Android app development, web development, machine learning, and cyber security. Manish is also a core member of the developer student clubs. He is a former IEEE Execom member and has won hackathons and CTF competitions. He has participated in many competitions even when he was in first year. He is really a very passionate student, and he is very much interested about cybersecurity and loves to explore the domain. In today's session, it is very much useful for all students from different streams, not only from electrical background or electronics or computer science people, but also it is also relevant to all the students of mechanical, IEM and architecture and everybody. This is a very interesting topic, cybersecurity and ethical hacking. I'm sure all of you will really get a lot of inputs about ethical hacking and cybersecurity. I thank you sincerely, Manish, for accepting this invitation to deliver a session in the induction program for the first year students. They're all your junior students, so you can start the session. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am, for the wonderful introduction. So hello, everyone. I am Manish Manohar, and today I'm here to speak about cybersecurity and ethical hacking. So before I get into cybersecurity and ethical hacking, I wanted you to know a little bit about myself so that you get to know what I'm interested in it and what can you expect from this particular session from me. So this would set the tone for the entire speech. Firstly, I'm a final year computer science and engineering student at Ramaya Institute of Technology. So you can say I'm your senior. So I'm still not used to saying that because it kind of makes me feel like I'm some old person. But yes, I'm a final year computer science engineering student at Ramaya Institute of Technology. And I was one of the winners of the Smart India Hackathon 2019 Software Edition. So I don't know if all of you are aware of what a hackathon is. Basically, hackathon is a place wherein students from different places team up with their friends and come to a location. And over there, they're given a problem statement by some organization, some kind of company, where let's say they're facing a problem with maybe the farmers want to connect with the industrialists. They want to sell their produce to the industrialists. And this company wants to solve that problem. They want to build a web platform. So in such a situation, what they do is they conduct a hackathon and get some innovative ideas from the young students. Such kind of problem statements you can see in this Smart India Hackathon. And Smart India Hackathon is one of the largest hackathons that happens throughout the nation. Now, the reason I'm stressing upon this point is because year on year, we have been seeing students from our institute participating in this particular hackathon, and not just participating, but winning it and coming back successfully. So I'm sure all of you guys with the intellectual capability that you possess and the skills that you possess, you can do it as well. And do you know when I won this particular hackathon? It was in the first year of my undergraduate program. So yeah, it's totally possible for anyone to do it if you have the proper guidance and the intellectual capabilities to do so. I was also one of the top 3 winners in the state for the March for Secure Code Capture the Flag contest. So Capture the Flag contest is a very interesting contest wherein we are provided with some kind of a question. And within that question, you will find a flag that is hidden. You need to use your cybersecurity related skills and out of the box kind of thinking in order to penetrate that particular network or maybe the website and find the flag, exploit the vulnerabilities and find a flag. If you do so and find more flags, you get more points. And in the end, the person who gets more points is the person who wins the Capture the Flag contest. So this was a competition that went throughout the state in various colleges. and I happened to be one of the top 3 in that. Consequently, because I came in the top 3, they also offered me an internship at the National Critical Information Infrastructure Protection Center as a vulnerability assessment and penetration testing intern. So during this particular internship, uh, we had to test the critical information infrastructure of the nation in 3 major sectors: the banking sector, power sector, and the aviation sector. So we had to test their web applications, any kind of flaws in them, any data that is getting leaked, or maybe the developers of these websites could have stored some secret tokens somewhere else. If they've exposed each of those things, we've got to analyze and report each of these things using the various ethical hacking tools. And based on that, the internship goes on. I was also a research intern at Samsung R&D, where I was working with machine learning. I was trying to build a recommendation system, which was recommending the utterances to the users for the Samsung's intelligent voice assistant called Bixby. Just like how we have Google Assistant, Alexa, Siri, similarly, Samsung's voice assistant is Bixby. So for that, we had to do some kind of research and produce the output. And something that I'm really proud of is the fact that I'm a core member of the developer student clubs. I would encourage all of you guys to check out this club. They do really awesome stuff. We have conducted Android app development workshops, web development workshops, machine learning workshops, game development, any of those trending technologies, we have done it. And we have conducted multiple competitions, capture the flag contests, bug bounty contests, ideathons, hackathons, and various events. So basically, we are creating that kind of a developer community in our institute. So yeah, that's really something I'm happy about. And moving on, I was also an IEEE executive committee member. So IEEE is basically a global organization called Institute of Electrical and Electronics Engineers. They publish a lot of research in various technologies: IoT, 5G, machine learning, deep learning, security, and various arenas. They keep conferences where experts, researchers, scientists from different locations come and share their insights, and you get to learn a lot through association with IEEE. And I was not just an IEEE member, I was the executive committee member responsible for the web resources team, where I was maintaining the website and developing it in order to ensure that it works smoothly and we can advertise all the events that we conduct in our IEEE student branch. And of course, the reason why we're gathered today is because I'm a cybersecurity enthusiast and I love exploring this particular field and learning more every day. I'm a lifelong learner. I keep learning every day, especially when you're in this field of technology. Every day something new happens. Like previously, if you take web development, there used to be the buzz about Angular, and then slowly that changed, and now you see people talking about something called React. Similarly, in cybersecurity, there could be one tool. Tomorrow they talk about some other tool that is a lot more advanced, and attackers are using different technologies. They're using artificial intelligence in order to make their attacks a lot more deadly. So that's how technology is keeping on changing, and we need to keep learning in order to keep ourselves updated and ready for tackling all kinds of issues. So I guess through this, I've been able to give you a fair idea of what I've done. And of course, there's a lot more stuff, but that way, you know what you can expect from me through this particular session. Before we dive into what cybersecurity and ethical hacking is, I would like to get you interested more in this so that you understand what is the brevity of this situation. Why is it today we are talking about cybersecurity in such huge numbers, right? In fact, our institute has introduced a new course on bachelor's in cybersecurity itself as a separate degree. Why would someone do that? Because the importance of this is increasing so much. There was a study conducted by the University of Maryland, the Clark School within it, where they found out that a cyber attack occurs by cyber criminals approximately every 39 seconds once. So how did they find out this? They took a study period of a few months and they analyzed per day on an average how many attacks occur on the computer systems. And it was really shocking to see that about 2,240 something attacks occur per day. And so when you average that out for a 24-hour period, it comes to about 39 seconds per day. So now it doesn't mean that every 39 seconds, like 39 seconds, there's an attack, and then next 39 seconds, another attack, and then next 39 seconds, another attack. No, it doesn't mean that. What it means is that on an average, that you could expect an attack in these periods. Like there could be a period of 5 minutes with no attack, and then in the next 5 minutes, there could be 10 attacks. So this is just another way of looking at it. The next thing is that email happens to be the primary entry point for 94% of the malware attacks. And this comes at no surprise, right? Because all of us use the email for all kinds of professional communication, whether it's your institute say, sharing with you any kind of important information, or maybe the government wants to send something to their employees, or organizations want to send something to their employees. They even share some confidential information through email. So clearly, attackers have found that email happens to be really juicy for them in terms of the data and ideas that they can get about the employees and what they're working on. So with no doubt, 94% happens to be the percentage of attacks, malware attacks through the email. Moving on, cybercrimes has increased during this COVID-19 pandemic by about 300%, right? Why is that? Because almost everyone went into work from home mode, right? The employees of the organizations were working in insecure environments in their home using their personal devices. They're using their personal devices to access the networks and systems of the company. Obviously, there's this lesser level of security that one would expect. When the employee is in the organization, there's a secure network, there are all kinds of security practices clearly performed, there are firewalls, and there are security administrators continuously monitoring everything. But from a work from home scenario, that is something that you cannot do very easily. So attackers took advantage of the situation and just hammered down all of the websites and employees with all kinds of attacks, which is why you see a 300% increase in the cyber crimes. Also, 445 million cyber attacks were reported in just the first quarter, the first 3 months of 2020. And that is a really huge number. Supply chain attacks. Supply chain attacks increased by about 78% in 2019. And when you look at the spam campaigns, right? These attackers usually what they do is they host websites in which they say you click on this link and then we'll be able to provide you with a really cheap rate of this particular product. You're really excited. Then you go and click on that link. And the second you click on that link, you find that all your data is lost and you're hacked. So spam campaigns have really increased by about 60%. Spam campaigns take about 60% of these malicious domains. And the next thing is phishing. Have you heard and have you ever seen a fisherman, like attaches a bait to the hook of that rod, and then he throws it into the water, and then he waits for the fish to catch that particular hook, get the food, and when the fish gets caught to that hook, he pulls it back. Similarly, in cybersecurity, there's this phishing which doesn't start with F, it starts with PH. So this phishing accounts for about 80% of the reported security incidents. So in this case, the bait would be a link that he could send through, let's say, your email, and says, your password has been leaked. Immediately change it now. Click on this link and enter your username and log in and change it. Login password and change it. So then you click on that and you enter all your login credentials. That link is the bait, and you clicking on that and entering your details are the fish. So you're clicking and you're entering the details, you get caught, the attacker pulls the details. So that's how phishing works. And on an average, we see that $3.9 million happens to be the average cost of a data breach, right? Now, data breach costs are not just the fact that attackers are asking you to pay money to them, but also there are a lot of privacy laws that is going on today, right? You know, the GDPR laws is very strict in terms of privacy. So they need to pay hefty fines as well in the courts because of their lack or their negligence in handling data. And this is just the costs, right? Not just that, even their reputation happens to just go away. The customers, all the clients will just lose trust in the company if there's a cyber attack at a really high scale. And we also find that online payment fraud in the e-commerce industry, it's predicted that by the year 2024, the payment frauds could be about $25 billion. Like in the previously, like a few years back, or maybe a decade or two back, we used to go to the shops in order to purchase any kind of provisions or any clothing or any electronic devices. But today, everything is online. We see Amazon, Flipkart, and any kind of online sites. You name what device you want to buy, you can order it, and it'll come to your home automatically. So obviously, through such systems, there is an online payment portal. uh, if there is any kind of minor flaw that the attacker finds, he could really cause major damage to a lot of people, the customers who are purchasing, the company's reputation, and so on and so forth. So cybersecurity in this particular part is also very important. So before moving on, I wanted to know I wanted to say what GDP of a country is. Basically, GDP is the gross domestic product of a country. It involves all the goods and products that are produced, the amounts, the income that is coming, and how much money is spent, how much costs, the expenses, the overall calculation of all of this for a nation is called the gross domestic product. Now, why is this related to cybersecurity, right? There's no relation. The relation is because of this particular interesting graph that I felt was really important to know. So yes, if you look at this, they have found a really interesting way where they took all of the cyber crimes that happen all over the globe, and they collectively called that as a country called cybercrime. So when you check the GDP, if you look at United States, about 19.39 trillion is the GDP. China, 12.01 trillion. Japan, 4.87. Then Germany, 3.68. Then UK, 2.62. India, 2.61 trillion. France, 2.58 trillion. Brazil, 2.05 trillion. And you go on like that. Russia, 1.52 trillion. And cybercrime as a country accounts for 1.5 trillion as a GDP index. So that happens to be bigger than 183 countries' GDP. If you take 183 further countries, their GDP is lower than the total amount that is collected through cybercrimes. So that's how huge cybercrime is. So I guess you're getting the the importance of why cybersecurity is important. And if you look at the malware infection rate, the infection growth rate, we see that year on year, starting from the year 2009, where it was about 12.4 million, and then went on to 2010, it became 29.97 million. And that growth rate went on year. 2014, it was 308 million, then 452 million, 580 million, 702 million. And then in 2018, it was 812.67 million was the total malware infection growth rate. Malware is basically the malicious software which is used by attackers to exploit any vulnerabilities. And now we are in 2022. So obviously, there's a lot more increase in the total malware infection growth rate, looking at this trend. Okay, so let's look at some of the case studies. I'm sure all of you are aware of this, but anyways, I'll say the Domino's pizza data leak. So one day my friend just sends me a news article I clicked that link and I saw, and in that headline, this was in the month of May 2021, the previous year. And in that article, it read, Domino's India data breach. Name, location, mobile number, email of 18 crore orders are up for sale in the dark web. Now, I've seen so many such headlines before, and I really don't care about it. I didn't really care about it a lot because I thought, why would my data be there anyways? But then he followed up with another link that opened a website. And in that website, when I entered my mobile number, I could see all my details which I had given to Domino's, my name, my address, and the previous orders that I have made. Everything was available over there. So you see, this is a serious threat to the privacy of individuals. And also, people started really attacking Domino's through various ways. Like they say, how can you leak our data on the dark web? They had to go through a lot of heat from the people. So that was that, and that data was for so many 18 crore individuals that accounted for about 13 terabytes of data. That's how huge a cyber attack this was on Domino's Pizza. Moving on to another cybersecurity incident. This is at a place called Maruchi in Australia. So you see, Maruchi is a place where tourists are attracted to. They go and they look at that place, and it's really amazing, and all such stuff happens over there. And in this place, there happens to be a local sewage system. And this particular sewage system handles about 9 million gallons of sewage every day. And it has 142 pumps, which are scattered all around that particular area. At the heart of this particular sewage system is something called as the SCADA, or Supervisory Control and Data Acquisition. So if you look at these sewage system, there will be multiple sensors. Let's say there could be a sensor for maybe the temperature, or maybe the pressure of the water within the pump, or maybe the purity. Okay, for sewage, we don't have any kind of purity related sensor, but yeah, you get the point, right? There are a lot of sensors that could be there for any kind of sewage system, or any control structure like you have, which uses SCADA. There will be a lot of sensors over there. So this particular supervisory control and data acquisition, the SCADA, will collect all of the inputs that it gets from those various sensors. And once it gets all of those inputs, it will then be, there will be some set of rules that are written for it to follow based on the levels at which each of those sensors are giving the input. Based on those rules, it will actuate the output to it, and the corresponding action will be taken. Maybe let's say the pressure is high in a pump, and it has to release the water to another place because the pressure is high. So it'll open the valve and the water can flow. So that's one example of how it could be working. So yes, there comes our villain, Wojtek Boden. So in the year 1999, he was the one in charge for all of these sewage pumps in Maruchi. And Boden had been working for this particular company for 2 years, and he knew the ins and outs of the entire system. And he knew how the software worked and how the pumps worked. He knew everything. And of course, with office politics, he kind of had a dispute with his bosses, and then he retired. I mean, he didn't retire, he just left the company. Well, that doesn't sound like something serious happened, right? Then came the impact. Within a few days, suddenly they started observing the pump stopped working. Alarms, they have these safety alarms, right? Like if the temperature exceeds a particular level, if you take a thermal power plant, for example, if the temperature or pressure in that particular power plant increases beyond a particular level, an alarm will go off so that the workers over there can set it back to normal, or if it's beyond controllable pressure or temperature, they can at least get a warning to escape from that location. So alarms are very important. And in this particular sewage system, suddenly the alarms also stopped working. And worst of all, 200,000 gallons of sewage water flooded vast areas. And obviously, sewage water is really stinky, right? The people, that stench was there for a long time. All the rivers around started turning black, and then the nature reserves were totally destroyed, and animals, like countless fish and wildlife, just died. Of course, the local population, as I told, they suffered with this particular stench for weeks. But what caused all of this? Why did the alarm stop working? Why was the pumps not working? Why was it not doing what it's supposed to do? How did they find out what happened? Is what you can see over here on your screen. At about 11 in the night, one of the engineers in this particular sewage system, he was sitting near there in the office location, and he made a small change to one of those pumps, and to his surprise, after making that change, within a few minutes, it came back to its original control. He was surprised. I just changed it just now. How come it changed back to the original? He didn't understand what was happening. Slowly, he changed it to another value, and he again changed back to the original. So he understood that someone had hacked into this communication network, right? And they were actually pretending to be one of the pumps, pump number 14. You remember I told there are 142 pumps in this sewage system. So the hacker was pretending to be pump number 14 and intercepting the communication. So that was just one point, right? One point was able to disrupt the whole sewage system. That's how dangerous it could be. So one fine day on April 23rd at 7:30 in the morning, there are a lot of errors started happening throughout the sewage system. And by then, they had already hired a private investigator to investigate the situation. They didn't know what is happening because this is the time when 1999, like cyber attacks were not so uh, at not such a high scale. So it wasn't that common. So not many people knew about it. A private investigator tracked down from where this particular communication is coming from. He found a car, this car in which this villain, you remember Wojtek Bowden, he resigned. That person was in that car on a highway. So immediately they called the police, and the police started chasing him. They confiscated his laptops, and they also found a two-way radio transmitter within that car. So just with the laptop sitting somewhere a few miles away, he was able to control the entire sewage system. How? Because he had a pirated copy of the software for this particular sewage system. So yeah, that is one of the case studies for what we're seeing. I'd like to show a video of how social engineering could be used in order to break into a company. So there is this hacker who is being paid in order to break into the network. And if he does so, they pay him a lot more. Let's see what happens. One second. Yes.
Hackers who don't just have.
Okay.
What do you think of when I say the word hacker? Some creepy dude in a basement? Well, that's a misconception. What if I told you there's a class of hackers who don't just have social skills? They have more social intelligence than anyone you'll ever meet. David Kennedy is one of them. He's what's known as a social engineer, or a people hacker. His craft is to dupe you into doing things and sharing information you probably shouldn't.
Can I just get your credit card number?
Some use it for illegal activity. In David's case, companies pay him to find out if employees are leaving the company vulnerable. He and his team show us how it's done. Step 1, spoof his number so it looks like he's calling from inside the company, and then call tech support.
Hello, you there? Hello?
Hi, this is Ken. How may I help you?
I was wondering if you can take a look at a website I'm trying to get to. It's for a big customer thing I'm working on for Monday, and I can't seem to get to the website from my computer.
Sure. What's the website? I'll see if I can get to it.
Thanks, man. I really appreciate the help. I mean, it could be a stupid thing. I'm really stuck with computers, but so it's www.survey. That's SURVEY -pro.com.
Yeah, I got a prompt to open. I just clicked open, and I'm at the site now.
Here's what the IT guy doesn't realize. By clicking that link, he's just given David full access to his computer.
Whoa, okay, that's weird. I just hit it and it seems like it's working fine now. Awesome. I don't know what you did, man, but I really appreciate the help.
Hey, no problem. That was easy.
That was it?
We're on this computer right now.
You were able to take over this guy's computer within, I would say, like under 2 minutes.
Under 2 minutes, yeah. Under 2 minutes, took over his entire computer, and think of it as not just his computer, but it's pretty much a downfall of the entire company.
In this case, the company was paying David to hack them and see if their employees would fall for it. They did. To show you this demo, we agreed not to use the company's name. Kennedy hacks to protect. He's part of a growing number of hackers using this skill for good. Josh Corman's one of them too. He started a group to help bridge the gap between hackers and big companies.
Hacking is a form of power. Not surprisingly, as you walked into my house and saw all the Spider-Man stuff, I'm a big fan of the Stan Lee line of with great power comes great responsibility. We're coming to a point where the outside world, with a breach a week, a breach a day, affecting people's personal lives and national security, we got to grow up a bit, and we need to be very deliberate about how we use that power.
Corman formed the group after his mom passed away.
She was my science teacher. She kind of taught me that darkness is the absence of light, cold is the absence of heat. You know, if you see something missing in the world, maybe it's our job to put it there. I think the world's going to be whatever we want it to be and whatever we make it. There are very, very bad people, which means it falls to the good people to try to fight it.
You feel like you have a very personal responsibility.
We have so much potential to shape our culture, our values, our safety. If not us, then who?
What do you think of when I
So you saw how smartly this particular attacker was actually paid by the company to try any way possible and break into their system. The first step, what he did was he spoofed an employee's email and phone number, and then he was able to talk with the technical team. He had created one link, as I told before, a malicious link. You click on it and everything is gone. So the technical team, he asked them, say this thing is not working. He told the technical team to enter that URL, and then that guy entered the URL and done. Once that was done, this attacker had access to not just his system, but the entire network. He was able to show that through this video. So I guess you can see how social engineering is basically a way in which I'm trying to fool a person into doing something that I want for my malicious intent. So that's what it was.
What do you think of when I say that?
Okay, so now that we know, we have seen some statistics and we've seen some case studies, and we now understand that cybersecurity is really important. Now let's look at what cybersecurity is actually, what cybersecurity actually is. So basically, cybersecurity is the practice of protecting systems, networks, and programs from any kind of digital attacks. This is the definition given by Cisco. Cisco is a company that produces all kinds of great cybersecurity related products for various organizations. Like if you are joining a company now, you'd see that they use virtual private network. It's mostly going to be from Cisco. So because they have that level of trust with this particular company. And a successful cybersecurity approach should have multiple layers of cybersecurity, right? At each level of the net, like for example, let's say he is able to enter a firewall. Next, he should be able to penetrate the network and then enter the system before going to your application. At each level, you must have some kind of security measure. So based on that, we can analyze how good is your cybersecurity, practice or whatever you're employed for your organization. And in an organization, there are various elements, right? The people, their data, the technology used, and various processes that happen. Each and every one of them should be involved in this. There should be awareness programs for people to understand what cybersecurity is and how it is important. So there are various elements of cybersecurity. Application security refers to, like, let's say you're able to produce a website, and in that there's a flaw wherein you have a form and I enter the details If I insert some malicious payload, I'm able to get the database of all the users who have registered on your website. So that's a major flaw, right? Application security is created to take care of all such kind of flaws. Information or data security is basically the protection of your data. Network security is when you take a network of systems, computers, devices which are connected to each other. The kind of data transfer that happens between them should be in a very secure manner. That refers to network security. Then comes business continuity planning. So in case of, let's say, a disaster, maybe there's some tsunami at your data center, right? There's a lot of servers working, and or there's a tsunami, or there's a flood, or there's an earthquake. But now there are various organizations which are dependent on the servers. You can't just stop and leave it for even one day. It has to continue. So in order for tackling such kind of issues, they have a business continuity plan. So in this business continuity plan, they keep analyzing what could happen, what wrong could happen, how do we tackle such an issue, what kind of drills do we take, how the employees should be ready for such kind of issue. Like it doesn't have to be always from a natural calamity. It could also be from an external entity trying to penetrate your network. Operational security is basically a way in which you're avoiding people from getting hold of your data. The next thing is cloud security. The next element is cloud security, where all of us are moving towards the cloud now. There are various like platforms, like Google Cloud Platform, Azure, AWS. There are multiple cloud platforms, and each of them are able to provide users, the clients, with a lot of data storage, retrieval processes, and many other facilities. So it's very critical because many organizations are completely going on the cloud itself, right? All the data is stored there, all the employee stuff are stored there, and even now healthcare is moving towards cloud slowly, gradually. So cloud security is very important in today's context. Then comes critical information infrastructure security. Like you remember, I told about my internship at the National Critical Information Infrastructure Protection Center. Over there, we dealt with the critical infrastructure security. Actually, that was critical information infrastructure, but critical infrastructure is, let's say, like this Maruchi, the local sewage system, right? There's a SCADA, what kind of attacks could happen. We need to secure the networks and all of those devices, and that falls under critical infrastructure security. And the next thing is physical security. Now, physical security doesn't mean I'm protecting myself by holding some shield from any attacker who's trying to shoot me or throw a knife at me. No, that's not physical security. Physical security is basically like, have you ever visited any big company? Like they have these access cards which they give, and only when you swipe the access card at a door, you're able to enter. So you're limited based on your access card, you're limited to particular locations within the company. So that is physical security. Like employees should have access to various locations. Those in the server room should only have access to the server room, or any visitor that comes should not have access to the server room or any of the employee locations, right? For that, the access card works. This is what physical security is. And of course, end user education. We need to educate people on what is cybersecurity and why we should take care of all of these policies, procedures, and ensure that we are ready for any kind of attacks. So now that we know what cybersecurity is, isn't ethical hacking the same thing? Why are there two terms? No, ethical hacking is a different term. Ethical hacking is basically a way in which you are penetrating into a system by taking permission of an organization or a company or a college or anything like that, and then you're finding flaws in their software. You find any kind of vulnerabilities, you report that. There are set procedures for those, and you should exploit only within limits. You shouldn't just destroy all of their assets, right? You need to penetrate with limits. And you should use the tactics that attackers use, because we can't just have a world of rainbows and unicorns, right? That's not how it works. the attackers are using really big tools and hammering down your website, you should also try using those and testing if your website can withstand that kind of a large scale attack. So ethical hackers are responsible for testing such websites for all kinds of vulnerabilities. And of course, the purpose of ethical hacking is to improve the security. You find flaws, you fix those flaws, release a new patch so that the customers are happy. And yeah, as I told, they use the same kind of hacking methodologies, just like attackers would use for the malicious purposes. And whenever you see a person talking about cybersecurity, there's always the CIA triad, which happens to be a very important concept in this field. So it's very simple, right? Confidentiality, integrity, and availability are the three things in the CIA triad. Confidentiality is basically when you store data, let's say you're storing data in some database or some server, right? Your confidential data is right there. You do not want your data to be leaked to some third party or some other organization. It should be kept confidential. Only authenticated users should be able to access that data. Integrity, the data that you obtain from those servers should be in a correct format. It shouldn't be broken down or something like that. It shouldn't be tampered in any format. Next is availability. Whenever I want my data, it should be there. Whenever I want to access it, it should be there. That's what availability refers to. And then there is one concept in cybersecurity. This is called cryptography. It's a very interesting field where you're trying to convert a plain text into another unreadable format using some kind of algorithm. So basically, this kind of cryptography is important when you're sending data in uncharted territory, right? Let's say there's a lot of attackers who are trying to penetrate a particular network, but your data has to pass through that particular network. In such cases, cryptography is very important. You need to ensure that your data is not stolen by any kind of attacker. And even if he steals it, he should not be able to make any sense of it. So with that idea, cryptography was made. There are multiple algorithms for the same. And when you look at the algorithm, the secrecy of this particular, the strength of the cryptographic algorithm should be on the secrecy of the key, not on the algorithm itself. That is, if an attacker knows the entire algorithm, how you're encrypting a particular text into another form, that should not matter at all. You should assume that attacker knows the entire algorithm. You should only keep the key very much secret. The procedure in which you're managing the keys is what is important. There are two types of encryption: symmetric encryption and asymmetric encryption. In symmetric encryption, we use the same key for both encryption as well as decryption of the text. Decryption is basically converting the encrypted data back to the original format. And in asymmetric encryption, we use two different keys. One is the public key and the other is the private key. Public key of the receiver is used to encrypt that data, and that data is sent to the receiver. The receiver has a private key which he can use to unlock that data and view the plain text. So that's how asymmetric encryption works. Now that we know what cryptography is, let us look at one of the attacks on cryptography, specifically called ransomware. What is a ransom? Ransom is basically an amount that we are paying to an attacker in order to get back what we want, what rightfully belongs to us, right? So that's what a ransom is. Similarly, here we have ransomware, wherein attackers are they're using cryptography to encrypt all of the files, all of the data that is there in your system, and you won't be able to access it at all. And for this particular encryption, they use the asymmetric encryption methodology, wherein there's the public and private key. They encrypt it using this particular mechanism, and without the private key, you really can't decrypt all this text. So how would a ransomware look, right? That's what we'll see next. Before that, why can't we trace the attackers, right? Now these attackers are trying to encrypt all our files. Why can't we just trace them and get hold of them? They should definitely leave some trace. But the attackers are really smart. What they do is they have this anonymous format where they use the cryptocurrency for getting the amount. So as we all know, Bitcoin is decentralized. So there's no way we can find out who is behind it. They ask you to make the payments in Bitcoin, and using all of that, they're able to make a lot of profits. Yeah. One of the example of a ransomware was the WannaCry ransomware, which I'm sure all of you are aware of. This happened in 2017, where it was attacking the Windows operating system particularly. It exploited something called as Eternal Blue. And Eternal Blue, funnily, was actually developed by the United States National Security Agency itself. It just got leaked into a hacker group called the Shadow Brokers. So these shadow brokers use this particular exploit to attack all systems which was operating with Microsoft Windows. And you know, the sad part of this is that it attacked all of those systems which only did not patch. Like Microsoft releases a lot of patches every time, right? Those systems which did not patch properly the operating system, only those systems were affected by this particular ransomware. So let's say you're attacked by some WannaCry ransomware. How would it look? I got this image from Wikipedia, where you can see it says you have this much time available. You need to make the payment right now and within this particular time, and we will give you the private key which you can use to decrypt and get back all your data. So they provide a link for you to check the payment, and they even give you a sample. They say you click on this button, decrypt over here, and you can see some of your files for free will decrypt. The rest you need to pay this amount and we will decrypt it for you. And these attackers are not really intelligent people, right? They use this ransomware as a service which some other person has created and attack you. So of course, once we know that ransomware is dangerous, we need to also know how to protect ourselves from attacks. There are various ways. You back up your data, you secure them, and then you practice safe surfing, right? Don't go into any malicious domains, and always use secure networks. That's really important. And stay informed regarding whatever latest ransomware attacks are. Another interesting concept is the steganography. Basically, steganos means hidden and graph means to write. So you take some normal object and you're writing stuff into it, or you're embedding something into it. That is steganography. More common example is, let's say there's an image and attackers are able to put in some text within that image, and that image will look the same. It'll look exactly the same as it was before. It's very difficult for our eyes to spot the difference. So that is one of the common ways in which steganography is used. And in fact, one of the first uses of steganography, you can trace it back to 440 BC, where ancient Greece people, they used to write the text on wood and then put wax on it to hide the message. Or let's say the Romans, they used invisible ink to write messages. In fact, during World War II, the Germans introduced microdots, where they used to write huge amounts of information in that particular microdot. Or we could use null ciphers. So now, if you look at this page, strange. I clearly remember putting some text in this page, but it's not visible. Oh no, what have I done? But if you look carefully, yeah, there's the text. Well, I'm kind of a magician. Haha, this is a highly classified message. So yeah, this is just one example I'm giving for steganography in a very, very basic sense. What did I do? I just changed the color of the text. That's all. So it could be as simple as that. That could also be steganography. And there are very various types of steganography. It could be embedding it within text. You can embed your secret message within an image. You could embed your secret message within a video or audio, or maybe Like when you're sending data packets through the network, you encrypt, you surround it with a lot of other kinds of data packets. That could also be one of the ways in which you use steganography. And let's look at one example. So you can see how they used the cotton swabs, they dipped it in lemon and wrote that on a paper. Then you cannot see it. The only way to look at that is by bringing a flame close to it, and then looks like this. You can see it's written "Happy Holidays." So that's one of the ways in which you can use steganography. So now that we know what is cryptography and what steganography is, there should be some kind of a difference, right? They both look like the same thing. No, they're not the same. In cryptography, we are actually converting a particular text into another encrypted format using some algorithm. Whereas in steganography, you're just hiding the text within some other object. That's the difference between cryptography and steganography. Moving on, it's very important to know that most of the times we are surfing in the clear web, right? And we think that that's all that there is, but that's not the case. That happens to be only about 4% of the entire web. Beyond the clear web, we have the deep web and the dark web. The deep web could be, let's say, you need some level of authentication to access those data. It could be medical related, academic, scientific, or government related data. Or maybe let's say you're logging into your Facebook account, right? You cannot just search your account online without any kind of authentication. Only you have access to your Facebook account or any social media account. So that's one level deep. That's the deep web. And also there's something called as the dark web, where all kinds of criminal activities happen in the dark web. Many times, like the case where we saw the Domino's pizza leak, right? 18 crore users' data was stolen. And where do you think the data went? It was put out on the dark web. So yeah, all kinds of wrong stuff over there, whistleblowers, everything you'll find on the dark web. So yeah, on your screen, you see something that looks like an onion. I wonder what that means in cybersecurity. It's just a logo of something called as Tor, the onion router. The onion router is used for accessing the dark web in a very secure and anonymous manner. Many spies as well use the Tor network for transfer of data between their organizations. So how it works is very simple. In the various systems that are there, it identifies some of the nodes as Tor nodes. If I could turn that, yeah. So it identifies some of the nodes as the Tor nodes, which you can see the plus sign. And once it identifies that these are the Tor nodes, it starts transferring the data in an encrypted format through that particular path, which is created. And then that goes to the recipient. This red arrow represents an unencrypted format. Let's say now you wanted to access, you wanted to send the information to some other person, let's say Jane. Now it's not going to use the same path. It'll find another path. It'll go through this one and then go like this and then reach Jane. So each time it's going to find a different path, and that's what provides the anonymity. It's very difficult to trace back to the original sender of that data. So that's how Tor network works. And when you want to access a dark web, you should always use a Tor network. Open source intelligence. So you see over here the story of Hansel and Gretel. I'm sure you're all aware of the story of Hansel and Gretel. They're siblings and they lived in a really poor family, not so well off. And one day the father and the stepmother decides that, oh no, we don't have enough money to feed our own selves. How do we feed these children? Do something. Uh, Tomorrow, the stepmother says, tomorrow you take these two children and go into the woods somewhere far away and leave them. Now Gretel overhears that and she thinks, oh no, what is happening? So immediately she goes out and collects some white pebbles and she keeps it with herself. The next day, when her father takes both of them into the woods, throughout the path, she keeps dropping some white pebbles. And in the night, uh, once the father goes back, those people just follow those white pebbles and come back. Of course, the story is a lot more, but what our focus today is on the white pebbles, right? Uh, just like how the white pebbles was used by Hansel and Gretel to follow their path back home, even here we are able to collect data. OSINT stands for Open Source Intelligence, wherein we are using multiple data points in order to get information about something. Let's say you want to know more about a person and you only know his name. So what is the next thing you do? You try to get the photograph of that person. Once you have the photograph and the name, you can use that to find his address, maybe through his Aadhaar card or any kind of a database which has this facial recognition system. So as you try step by step to access more and more information, this particular process is what is called open source intelligence. And of course, we do not want to reinvent the wheel. There are a lot of tools available, such as Maltego. In a Maltego tool, it is able to use all the data collected and form something like a graph, a graphical structure. And all of those graph nodes have the data points. So it's very easy for you to visualize about the profile of a person. Shodan is like the way we have Google search engine. Shodan is a search engine for the IoT devices and networks. So let's say that any kind of, let's say there's this cameras, right? We have CCTV cameras all around. If it's not properly configured, you could actually get to see CCTV cameras through Shodan, right? That's how dangerous it is. And the harvester. The harvester is one in which you can collect information regarding the emails of various users. And Google Docs. Basically, the way we search on Google is by entering, let's say I want to know more about cybersecurity. I write what is cybersecurity, how it works and stuff like that. Instead, if I want to use a more smarter way, I write what is cybersecurity and I give file type : PDF. So then it'll give a list of all those PDF files only which is related to what cybersecurity is. Similarly, we have Yandex image search. You remember I told about how we could use the image and find similar stuff. Yandex image search Yandex is used for finding similar images to what input you're giving. Of course, Yandex is not just used for image search, it's used for other purposes as well. But particularly Yandex image search, I found to be useful. And you can also use GitHub Docs, just like Google Docs. Forensics happens to be another part of cybersecurity. It is basically a way in which you're analyzing what you've collected and you investigate further so that you can present that evidence in the court of law. And there are various ways you can do that. So basically, there are 3 steps in digital forensics. The first one is data acquisition. Basically, let's say you have a data drive. In a crime scene, you found a data drive of a person. You need to carefully take that. You're acquiring that drive. And now you cannot directly examine this original drive. You need to create a copy of that. And you need to analyze only in the copy of that particular drive. And then once you have done all kinds of analysis, your next step is to report what you have found in the court of law so that you can catch the criminal and prosecute him. So the way the court verifies that you're not tampered with the data is by hashing both the original as well as the copy that you've created. And if both of these hashes are the same, then it means You have not done any kind of tampering of the data, and that evidence is taken to be true. And there's something called as the OWASP Top 10 Open Web Application Security Project. This is like a non-profit organization wherein they have like a lot of volunteers, thousands of volunteers, where they are analyzing the web application security flaws. It could be, let's say, broken access control. Maybe you're not able, for example, in a website, it says, let's say example.com/ID/an ID number, let's say 1. That is your ID number to access that website. For some kind of reason, you just change that ID number 1 to 2. And if you're able to see some other user's data, then that is a very well-known case of broken access control. Similarly, various flaws they found and they report it, and they keep a top 10 list of vulnerabilities which they found, like cryptographic failures, injection, insecure design, and so on and so forth. When it comes to cybersecurity, it's very important to know that computer networks are an integral part of it, right? If you take the OSI model, there's a model in which how the data is transferred from one place to another. At the bottommost layer, we have something called as the physical layer. The physical layer is responsible for the transfer of data as bits, a raw bit stream. Above that, we have something called as the data link layer. The data link layer is responsible for the transfer of data between the nodes in a particular network segment. And the network layer is for transferring the data from one source to a destination network. It sets all those net IDs properly for the transfer of data. The transport layer is responsible for the transfer of data between the end users itself. And the session layer is important for maintaining the sessions. It opens or closes the sessions for the transfer of data or any kind of information. We need the session layer. It's what session layer takes care of all of those functions. And then comes a presentation layer. The presentation layer is very simple. The data could be available in various formats, different syntax and semantics. So what we do is we take that particular data, and the presentation layer will present it in the correct format to the application layer. And the application layer is what our systems will use for our applications. So the data finally from the application layer is taken for our use. So let's say you're sending data. First, it goes through the application layer, and then it keeps adding some extra information at each and every layer, and then goes to the physical layer. From the physical layer, and then it's transferred the data to your, let's say you want to send to Bob, you want to send some information to Bob. So then it goes like that to Bob, and from in Bob's level, there is also going to be an OSI model. And the data has to again pass through physical, data link, network, transport, session, presentation, application, and then he's able to view the data. Of course, this is a very big concept, so I can't just put all the information in this particular slide. So you get the basic idea of it. Another interesting question that most of us in this field come with is, what happens when you type amazon.in in the web browser? Well, you type amazon.in and the website comes, that's it. No, there's a lot more that goes in behind the scenes. To understand what goes in, we should first understand what is DNS. DNS is basically the domain name server. It's what is called as the internet's phone book, right? You're entering amazon.in, but that's not what is being searched over there. It first contacts the DNS resolver, which will contact higher level. There are multiple DNS servers all across the globe. So it will analyze those. It will get the amazon.in and the corresponding record for that amazon.in. The IP address will be obtained from this particular DNS server. And that IP address is sent back to the browser, which is then able to access the website, right? So it first contacts the root name server or the top level domain server, authoritative server, and at any point it will get when it gets the IP address corresponding to Amazon.in, it'll then send it back to you, which you can use for accessing Amazon.in or example.com, some example. So that's what it is. Another important concept happens to be the operating system. The operating system is basically a layer of software that sits exactly in between your application, your software, and the hardware. It adds an extra layer of protection so that you do not directly access the hardware for any kind of operations. If your file wants to, retrieve some data, you cannot directly access the hardware. The operating system has the set of functions which it will use for accessing those hardware. And there are multiple functions that an operating system do. This itself is a very huge research area, right? So it's not easy to put in a lot of information in one slide, but this could give you a general idea. It could be process management. Like there could be multiple processes when a program is running. Process is basically an active entity of a program. Let's say in a program, there's a line which asks you to obtain data from a database. So this particular line creates a process. That process is responsible for retrieving the data and giving to this particular program. Similarly, there could be multiple processes. And if two processes are accessing one particular resource, there could be what we call as a deadlock. And a deadlock situation, you cannot recover from it. It's very difficult. So in order to avoid this, there are a lot of mechanisms available as well. Similarly, we have file management, network management, storage management, security management, and various other functions that operating systems are responsible for. So, yeah, well, I thought that you could answer this, but I don't think you have access to the chat box. So yeah, so these are three main logos. The first one is the Windows logo. The second one is the Mac OS. And the third one is the logo for Linux. And these are some Linux distributions like Kali Linux, Parrot OS, and Fedora. So Kali Linux happens to be my favorite Linux distribution because it comes with a set of tools inbuilt in this particular operating system itself for ethical hacking. So if you're into ethical hacking, the kind of operating system that you would have to use is Kali Linux for sure. So yeah, now that we know operating systems are important and various operating systems are available, we obviously have to protect them from various kinds of attacks by attackers. How do you do that? Through various mechanisms like authentication. You could have firewalls to understand which IP addresses to block, which IP addresses not to block, whitelisting, blacklisting, and many other concepts that come into this. And you should always keep your softwares up to date, right? Like you remember the case of Eternal Blue, which was used to exploit that the Windows operating system, because they didn't patch the system, WannaCry virus ransomware was able to attack all those systems. So it's very important to keep your softwares up to date. And don't just plug and play any of your USB devices which you get somewhere randomly, because those could be really dangerous as well. And another important concept which I felt is relevant is the defense in depth. Just like in those olden days, right? We had these castles. In the center, there would be the king, and around that, all the ministers will be there, the king, queen, prince, princess, and the ministers, all in the central location. Surrounding that, there's a corridor with huge walls outside of that, and soldiers 24/7, they're monitoring for any kind of attacker or intrusion over there. And around those huge walls, they dig up the land and put a lot of water, right? As you can see over here in the image. So within this water, they put really sharp stuff and even animals like crocodiles, which are very dangerous. So that in a way, it's very difficult for an attacker to penetrate this castle. First, he would have to get through the water, the dangerous crocodiles, and then go through the soldiers standing over there monitoring. Only then can he reach the king, right? In a similar way, In cybersecurity, before an attacker comes and gets hold of your device, he should first penetrate your physical layer, network layer, and all those different layers before actually coming to your device. So this is the concept of defense in depth. And another important concept is that of zero trust. Basically, it's a framework in which you give least privileges to the people. For example, let's say me and my colleague are going to the office, and we've been going for years together. There's this access card which we need to swipe and in order to enter. And the security guard over there knows knows both of us because we've been coming for years. Let's say suddenly one day, my colleague forgets to bring his access card to access the main entry gate. So if he asks the security guard, see, today I forgot to bring, could you please allow me? We know each other anyways, right? Could you allow me inside? If the security guard says, yes, I know you, you can go ahead, then that is not zero trust. But if the security guard says, no, sir, we have a set of policies, we have a set of rules, you have to follow this, you need to have your access card, without which we are not allowed to get you inside. I know, I'm aware of you, but I know you well, but I'm not allowed to do so. That is zero trust. Nobody should be given more importance and more privileges than what is required. For example, let's say the users through the devices want to access any of the cloud services or any of the agency services in the cloud infrastructure. In such a situation, before he accesses these cloud services, there's something called as the policy enforcement point. So before he accesses these the cloud software services, the policy enforcement point will ensure that this particular user has the correct privileges to access it. If he does not have the privileges, he will not be able to access the cloud. So this is one of a very basic way of looking at zero trust architecture. And of course, it works with three main principles. The first one is to terminate every connection and check if it is proper and following all the policies. The second one is to protect the data using granular policies based on context. Basically, you're verifying all the access rights and use all granular business context. And the third point is reduce the risk by eliminating the attack surface. Basically, let's say a person is coming to, as an ethical hacker, he's trying to test your systems as to how strong it is. In such a situation, he has to be able to, he should only be given access to a very limited amount of, only one particular system. He should not be given access to the entire network. So that's the way in which you reduce the attack surface. And of course, there are threats, vulnerabilities, and risks, various jargons, which I guess I can skip through. Malware. When it comes to malware, there are various types. A virus is one in which it requires a host in order to actually execute the malicious code. And it could steal data, launch DDoS attacks or ransomware attacks, multiple kinds of attacks. Worms, on the other hand, they do not require a host. They can actually copy themselves without the requirement of a host, and they can delete the files, install backdoors. They do not require any instigation. They can start doing it on their own. That's how they work. Trojan horse is basically a way in which malicious code is hidden into a particular object. Let's say you're downloading some new game, right? There's some game which is in the latest over there. You're trying to download the game. In such a situation, what we should, what happens is the malicious code is stored in the, sorry, there was a notification on my phone. I just saw that. Yeah. So what happens is the malicious code is stored in a particular in this particular game, and when you download it, it automatically starts to run. So always be careful when you're downloading any game from uncharted domains. And of course, a botnet. Botnet is where an attacker will have a control of a control server, and that particular control server will have access to multiple unpatched devices which are really old, and he can use those to send a lot of requests and overwhelm your server with a lot of requests and lead to a DDoS attack. So that's what botnets are used for. And there could be adware as well. Adware is basically like they say, like iPhone advertisement, like click me and get a new iPhone. And then when you click it, all the malware is downloaded. So that's what adware is. Spyware is basically to get information from the victim through this malicious software. It'll try to penetrate the network and get all the data that your, let's say if there's a keylogger software and that software is installed in your device, now the attacker can understand what all keys you're typing in the keyboard. So let's say you open your banking website and you enter your password, the attacker will get to know what is your password. That's how spyware works. Okay, yeah, there could be some suspicious emails. Like, what are the points to consider? For example, if you look at this, it says update 2816.html, and it doesn't look like a really professional say. It says file is attached, and you click on this link and change the login information. This is something of a classic case of phishing. In this particular email, you can see that the email is coming from lives-msn.com. Now that seems like it's not really legitimate. So again, it's a suspicious email. And of course, whenever it comes to banks, always be careful to never click on links to update your login credentials or any important information, because almost definitely it is going to be an attack. So that's why this particular email, which asks you to upgrade it, is a spam email. Moving on, there are different types of hackers. White hat hackers are the good guys who hack with permission, and they're able to fix the flaws. Black hat hackers, on the other hand, are those who are hacking without permission. They break into the networks without permission, and they get money from that, personal gains. They do it for wrong purposes. Gray hat, on the other hand, they actually use, they don't take permission to hack into the network, but whatever flaws they find, they report it to the organization. Again, this is not right. You should always take permission and do, but gray hat falls in between white and black. And of course, cybersecurity works with different kinds of teams. The red team is responsible for penetrating the network and finding flaws. The blue team is responsible for actively looking at the logs, any kind of log files of, let's say there's any kind of indicator of a compromise. Blue team is responsible for that. And the purple team is responsible for you looking at the data collected from the blue team and the red team and perform the further steps. Whenever an attacker tries to penetrate a network, there are 5 steps that they follow. Reconnaissance is the first step, in which they try to map the entire network and the system, what kind of services that particular system is using. That comes in reconnaissance. The second step is scanning, wherein the attacker will scan your network and understand if there are any kind of open ports, any kind of flaws. They use vulnerability scanners to scan and find vulnerabilities in your system. And of course, the third step, which is the important step, is where they start doing the action, right? They penetrate into your system through various means, like buffer overflows or phishing attacks or injection attacks, and try to gain access to your system. And once you gain access, it is important to also maintain that access to the system, right? You need to stay connected to the system so that you can keep sending exploits or keep getting information through spywares or other kinds of malicious software. And of course, the attackers don't want to get caught, so they have to perform a lot of stuff like uninstalling any kind of scripts or applications which they installed in the victim's computer. Any new files they created, they have to change that. And all the logs which came, they need to delete all of those. And in such ways, they need to clear all their tracks so that they're not caught later on. And of course, there are multiple tools used for ethical hacking. In the interest of time, I guess I'll move forward. Yes, work from home happens to be a major blow to companies, right? People are working in unsecured environments. The employees are working in unsecured network connections. They're having unsecured network connections to the company's resources, and they're generally not able to spot any kind of crimes or scams. And they also use weak passwords. They obviously fall for phishing and malware or ransomware attacks, and they're obviously using their personal devices, right? In the company, when they're going to their company, they are given access to their company's laptop, their desktop, and they're protected through the firewalls and the network itself through various security measures. But in the house, that is something that they won't get. So this happened to be a major blow for companies all across the world. And yes, if you are really interested in learning more about it, more about cybersecurity, through practical means, I suggest that you go for bug bounty competitions, wherein the companies host their websites over here, and they say, if you're able to find flaws in our website, we will pay you. That's what a bug bounty is. Capture the flag contests, as I told, is where you're finding flags, and that way you can improve on your cybersecurity related skills. And of course, it's very important to network with other individuals who are in this particular field and are experts. So for that, I suggest that you attend security conferences like the RSA conference, DEF CON, ActivityCon. ActivityCon is conducted by HackerOne, which is one of the famous bug bounty platforms available. In fact, remember I told you about developer student clubs, which is one of the technical clubs of our college. So we had also organized a CTF competition in which I wanted to show a sample of that one simple question. Let's see, in this particular question, it says, Dr. Doofenshmirtz has created a new formula called the Hackinator 3000. It's able to bring the dead back to life. And Doofenshmirtz gives this particular formula to your friend. Now your friend is not able to talk properly because of that formula. But your friend knows that there's a cure for that in the laboratory somewhere. He's trying to tell you what that cure is, but you're not able to understand. If you look in the speech bubble over here, it says, rawr, grrr. It sounds like some zombie kind of thing. So yeah, we also give some extra clues. For example, if you search for zombie translator, and over here, if you enter this particular text, RAA, ORR, was that GRR, triple ARAA, RRR. And when you click on translate, it says CTF, you got this. So that's the flag. It could be as simple as that, right? That's how simple a CTF question could also be. So yeah. And always keep yourself updated by listening to podcasts like Darknet Diaries. It's a very interesting way. They bring hackers from all over the world, and they kind of narrate their stories, what they did, how they secured networks, how they breached into other companies. So you get an update on what new things are happening in cybersecurity. And of course, always follow companies and cybersecurity experts on Twitter, because that's where all kinds of updates I have found to be interesting. So yeah, definitely do check them out. So yes, I guess we'll come to an end of the speech. I would like to end by saying, if attackers do not rest, then why should we, the good guys, stop? Secondly, before you learn about how to break into a system, you must learn how to build them. You must learn first, let's say, web development, Android app development, before you try to break the websites or Android applications. So that's how you go on building your skills. And Robert S. Mueller says there are only two types of companies. One is those who have already been hacked, and two are those who are going to be hacked in the future. So basically, everyone are vulnerable when it comes to attacks, cyber attacks. Stefano Napo says it takes 20 years to build a reputation of a company and just a few minutes of a cyber incident to totally destroy it, right? Like the way we saw Domino's attack today, right? In the case study, just by one attack, the company's reputation was lost. Of course, it's a really huge company, so they somehow survived. But if it's a small company, they're totally going to go bankrupt in a matter of few days. And I personally believe that artificial intelligence in conjunction with cybersecurity could do wonders. So yes, if you're interested to know more, we could always connect. It's my LinkedIn profile, GitHub ID, and Twitter account. You can always connect with me and I'll be ready to help. Thank you. These are some of the references I used for collecting information. So yes, we came to an end. Oh, it's really nice that you guys have been so patient throughout the speech. Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Manish. It's a very excellent session. I sat through the whole session and listened. I also appreciate you can create a free feedback link and send the Google link to me, Google form link. I will send it across to the students. Let us take the feedback and let us see how the students have responded. I'm sure they'll get in touch with you. Students are in the campus now. Again, unfortunately, for 2-3 days, the college is closed now.
Yeah,
I think through the links, whatever you are given, I'm very sure they should be able to get in touch with you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you once again.